It's lovely to see such a packed audience. Anybody think there was an election? Chairing the meeting tonight will be Tom Innes from the Evening Post. He's got a dual role. We've got 7 candidates for 4 positions of deputy. That's because we're now one big constituency with St Peter's and St Juan. So it's going to be an interesting choice of candidate. And I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constable, and for your introduction. Just at the outset, I shan't be voting for any of these candidates in the election because I'm not a resident in this district. So I'm an impartial St Brelardite coming in to keep order tonight. I do have some connections in St Mary. My wife used to live here. We got married in St Mary's Church 11 years ago, and it's nice to see a few people from the congregation here this evening. The other thing was to say is that I do have a colleague alongside. Myself and Lucy worked at the JP for a couple of years prior to last July when she went on maternity leave. So just for transparency, that's been mentioned to all the candidates, and nobody up here has an issue with it, but we just wanted to acknowledge it. The format this evening is that we're going to work down the line, and each of the candidates will have a 2.5-minute opening a slot in which they can cover any areas that they want, introduce themselves, mention the key points of their manifestos or anything like that. They will get 2.5 minutes for that. We'll work our way down the line from east to west, and we will then have questions from the floor. We'll be taking questions 2 at a time, just 1 per person, but I'll take 2, and we'll then go down the line again, and the candidates will have 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds, in which to address those 2 questions. They can decide between them, they can decide individually how long they wish to devote to each, but they will have only 90 seconds in total. And also to introduce Anne Prophet, the parish secretary, if you could give a little wave. Anne is timekeeping tonight, and we'll be giving a polite tinkle on her bell when you've got about 10 seconds left, and then a slightly firmer blast on the horn, which indicates that time is up. So everyone knows where they stand with the timelines. Right, we've got, I'm sure, lots to get through and lots of questions, so that's quite enough of the preliminaries. And so each candidate's now going to give their opening address, starting to my far right with Deputy Roland Hewlin from the Jersey Alliance.
Thank you very much. Can I just check if I'm standing that the microphone is working? Is that a yes? Okay, thank you very much. Is that a no? It's an, okay, so I will sit if you don't mind, but for a point of being heard. Thank you all for coming along this evening. We've had an unprecedented 4 years with Brexit, COVID and the atrocities in Ukraine, which has compounded the work of the Assembly and the parish. So what else did I do? I initially sat on the Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel, Public Accounts Committee and the Planning Committee. I was invited to be Assistant Chief Minister and took on responsibility for our migration and population challenges. I also sat on the Political Oversight Group for the Our Hospital project. I believe in the last term I supported many St Peter's residents, as I was for the last 4 years, with their varied issues, speeding challenges and addressing the health concerns of PFOS pollution being the most notable. Having now knocked on most doors in St Mary's, I'm getting a strong message. You are not in favour of the electoral boundaries and loss of senators. And being the smallest parish with no dedicated deputy, many feel you may be left out. I sensed that early on and therefore started my campaign at St Mary's with the determination to try and visit every home. If elected, I pledge to support everyone in all 3 parishes equally. So what have I learned in the last 4 years? I'm afraid that an affluent island like ours is not delivering as well as we can for those we serve. Education is good, but our state school outcomes are slightly worse than the UK. In health, our waiting lists are unacceptable, and our ability to recruit talent is deeply concerning. I worry about our young and their future in Jersey, about buying or renting homes, about their career aspirations, and variety of options open to persuade them to stay. What is most disturbing, whilst knocking on doors, is the number of people who say they won't be voting. Why, I ask, and the answer is invariably, well, it won't make a difference. Nothing will change. They hit the nail on the head. Well, if nothing will change, you must look at the root cause of why, and then you must address it. I believe, and the Jersey Alliance believe, ministerial government isn't working effectively. This needs to be fixed urgently so the people of Jersey can have the government it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Hewlin. Now, passing down, we have the Jersey Liberal Conservative candidate, David Benn.
Can you hear me all right, everybody? Good. Good evening to the Chair, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honoured to stand as the Jersey Liberal Conservative candidate in coalition with the Progress Party. I've had a career in farming where I was elected to many positions of responsibility, including President of the Students' Union, Chair of the Potato Committee and many other committees, a grower director of the Jersey Producers and Merchants Organisation, and I've been a member of the Honorary Police in St Ouen and St John. I've been a member of the mustard seed team for many years, and I've also had a business in France coordinating building projects. I've great experience dealing with the public, industry, civil servants and politicians. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not have the right to leave things as they are. To burden our children and our grandchildren with ridiculous debt, little chance of a house, and environmental problems that threaten their very future. I cannot stand by any longer and watch these things taking place, and the government seems to be doing it. We need urgently to review the hospital, to relook at other options, and to save many millions, and yet still have a hospital fit for the future. I want to see houses built at a sensible price with ecological technology that will be cheap to heat. We must all have a stake in this, and I want to tackle the population balance. For the environment, and this is a huge subject, and as a rural parish, we are greatly affected. I want to be part of a new approach that draws everybody into playing their part, whether it be business, farmers, vegetable producers, fishermen, car owners, house owners, etc. We all need to alter our approach in almost everything we do, because if we don't, we risk the future of those we love most, our grandchildren, their children, and generations to come. And we must also have renewables. I want to promote and help our business community and also support the entrepreneurs who will, perhaps using digital technology, be a major part of our business future and enhance Jersey's standing internationally, particularly if we can educate them here. I'm interested in the arts, sports, leisure activities, and the promotion of community, which all help in our well-being and ultimately our health. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, please vote for someone who listens, considers carefully, and then acts. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And our next candidate is Lucy Stevenson.
As is tradition now, can you hear me? Does that sound okay? Great. Hello everyone, my name's Lucy Stevenson. I'm a mum of two. I've been a journalist at the JEP for over 13 years. I'm a charity governor and a small Genuine Jersey business owner. It's often said that politics shouldn't be about personalities, and that's absolutely right. It's about so much more. But politics is about people. And that's why I'm standing here today. Because our government has forgotten what it's like to put real people at the heart of decision making and of connecting with islanders on a meaningful level. As I've been meeting people on doorsteps these past few weeks, that message has been made even more clear. People do not feel listened to, valued, or communicated with. It's no wonder more or less every single person I speak to says they want change. We're now at a crossroads where together we can choose to make that change as a community. It's time for a new start, a reset. It's time for a fresh perspective that's still proudly Jersey. So what does a reset look like and how do we make it happen? Well, it starts right at the beginning by electing a diverse group of people who can truly represent islanders. I passionately believe that diversity around the decision-making table leads to better outcomes. And we need those people to be committed to working collaboratively and to positive politics. They need to be good at listening, compassionate, and capable of connecting with people. We also need strong, inspiring leadership. Myself and my Better Way 2022 colleagues are committed to all of those things. I've put housing, education and the cost of living at the heart of my manifesto because that's what so many people have told me they want us to address right now. No individual or political party can promise to solve any of those complex issues alone, but we can begin to tackle them if we work together as a community. Here in St Mary, I know there are concerns about the new electoral system and how it will work and who will represent your interests. I want to assure you that if I am elected, I will make sure your parish is not forgotten and that we work together to build even stronger communities for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. And number 4 on our batting order is Senator Ian Gorst.
Good evening. I'm Ian Gorst and I'm pleased to stand before you as an independent candidate. As a strong supporter of the parish communities, I very much hope to have the opportunity of representing you and St Mary for the next 4 years. As your deputy, I will work to represent your interests and, importantly, to ensure your voice isn't lost in the new system. I'm sorry that we are no longer able to vote in an island-wide election. I tried to save senators. I brought a proposition to keep senators. If we elect enough candidates who support senators, then we can bring them back at the next election. Since 2018, my job as External Relations Minister has been to stand up for Jersey in the world and to help grow our economy. I'm proud of Jersey and to represent our island. I negotiated a Brexit deal for Jersey which maintained our constitutional privileges and protected our trade. We delivered new and tougher immigration controls, ensuring we make more use of work permits in the future. Brexit was not Jersey's decision, and the negotiations weren't easy, but I stood up for the island and defended our position before French and EU politicians and the international media. We weren't bullied, and we can be proud that we have successfully come through a challenging period together. As the Minister responsible for financial services, I've represented the industry in our key markets, delivering growth, jobs and revenue to fund public services. Last year, we agreed an updated strategy that will keep the industry competitive and open to new opportunities. We have modernised legislation, and we have worked to ensure that the new global tax rules are fair in Jersey's long-term interest. In 2023, we have an international assessment of our industry, which is vital for our economy, and with your support, I hope to again lead us to a successful outcome. In St Peter, I spoke about my policies to address the housing and the cost of living crisis, to return to financial prudence and to reduce debt. These key issues must be the top priority for the new government. With the right experience and leadership, we can deliver a prosperous future. I ask for one of your votes on the 22nd of June. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Ian. And now next up is Senator Christina Moore.
Thank you all very much for joining us this evening. People on the doorsteps have been telling me that they want a new government. I'm asking for your vote to help me tackle the big issues, the housing crisis, the squeeze of the cost of living, and of course, public spending. In particular, capital spending and the hospital project. Having scrutinised this for the last 4 years, I know there is a deliverable, more affordable alternative. Because this election is about building a team, one that will listen, deliver change and be accountable. A team that will support Jersey's entrepreneurial spirit, create the right conditions and return confidence to islanders. You can read my full manifesto at moreforjersey.je. Meeting people on the doorsteps of St Mary, I am very aware that you want to see your local interests protected as well. It is a new system, but let's all give it a chance. We are going to see greater competition in every voting district, and those who are elected will have a stronger mandate than before, gaining at least 1,500 votes. So if you choose me as one of your 4 deputies, I believe we can add value to the wonderful community in each of our 3 parishes. First, by creating a constituency office. Here in St Mary would be a great starting place, a place where each of your 4 deputies will be able to work and meet with you. Community is one of the very special things about our island. I will defend our parish system. In fact, I would like to see it strengthened and adapted to fit the future. There is so much more that can be done. A parish plan setting out how we use our space and protect our natural heritage. A community support team to serve those who need a little bit of help. And community gardens where we can grow seasonal produce and distribute it through food hubs, each keeping our community active, vibrant, and supporting each other, tackling loneliness and improving our health outcomes. Because in the last 4 years, we've slipped back in terms of the Better Life Index, how it's measured by the OECD, and I want to get us back to the top 20. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a better way, and together as one united community, we can move forward and deliver our best future. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Christina. And our next candidate is Senator Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you very much, Tom. My microphone's on. Christina, you need to turn yours off. Stop the clock. I think you can start the clock now. Good evening, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Since being re-elected to the States in 2018, I have worked on behalf of all islanders during one of the most difficult and challenging periods in recent history to ensure Jersey remained resilient, safe and financially secure. My key focus during the pandemic was on protecting our health, the economy, and preserving islanders' jobs and livelihoods. In my role as a minister, I have represented the island overseas, both defending and promoting our interests and strengthening our relationships with other countries and jurisdictions. My key priorities for the next term of office are tackling the sharp rises in the cost of living, resolving the housing affordability crisis, rebuilding and further developing our economy, improving skills and education to provide new opportunities in retraining and reskilling for islanders of all ages, to finally getting our new hospital built on time and within budget, ready to be fully operational and treating patients by December 2026, and to make certain we get strong, decisive leadership to rebuild confidence, unite our States Assembly, deliver improved management of the public sector, smaller government structures and rigid cost controls to ensure we are delivering the very best value for the taxpayer. Jersey is facing significant challenges, and it is important for islanders to elect a States Assembly that is both representative of our community and which contains the skills and experience necessary to deal with the challenges that lie ahead. The new States Assembly will require a combination of fresh thinking together with highly experienced people with a strong track record of tackling serious and difficult issues. I too am not in favour of the new electoral system. I'm especially not in favour of the removal of senators, and that's not just because I am one. The office of senator is by virtue of its island-wide mandate the most democratic and therefore the most accountable. And the States Assembly should not have made a decision to approve this package of reform without first seeking the endorsement of the electorate, or in the height of the pandemic when islanders quite rightly had their focus on other issues. My aim is to be the best possible representative, to continue to serve our community, uphold our special parish systems and our unique island identity, and to work hard on your behalf to secure our future prosperity and well-being. Thank you. Thank you.
Don't know if that prolonged bell was coming close to a yellow card there from my right, but well, we'll let it go. And finally, our seventh candidate is representing Reform Jersey. It's Helen Evans.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. And it's wonderful to see so many people here. I'm sorry some of you are standing rather uncomfortably. My name is Helen Evans. I'm the Reform Jersey candidate for St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter. I decided to put myself forward for election because I believe that I have the skills to be an effective States member representing you, the people of St Mary, and those of St Peter and St Ouen. I trained as an accountant at the UK National Audit Office, often described as the UK public spending watchdog, and then as a qualified accountant, I went on to work in the public sector group of Moore Stephens in London, where I led and managed assignments working throughout Europe and in other parts of the world, mainly on behalf of the EU and the United Nations. And we were engaged in looking really at the management of public money, the spending of public money, including such things as the audit of large capital projects and audits of procurement processes. Additionally, it's been my privilege for the last 20 years to work as an associate lecturer for the Open University, and I'm currently teaching modules in mathematics and statistics to students on a range of programmes, not just in maths and statistics, but also in data science and economics. I'm standing for Reform Jersey because I've been so impressed by the effective teamwork of the members of the party in the previous assembly, and I believe it is as a Reform Jersey member I can best represent you. Our key pledges set out in our manifesto cover precisely the areas of concern people are raising with me on the doorstep, housing and cost of living being two important ones. If elected, I will work with other Reform Jersey members to deliver on our manifesto commitments to create a more equal and cohesive society, a fairer society, and to restore government accountability and democracy. Thank you for listening, and please consider giving me one of your votes on the 22nd of June. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're going to move into the questions from the floor. We're running through until 8:30 this evening, so hopefully there'll be time to get plenty in. If you could just give your name and a concise question, please. We don't want policy statements from the floor, if that's okay. There's a general election in 4 years' time if you feel that way inclined. But for tonight, just a short question, please. We'll take two at a time, one from each questioner, and then we'll move down the line. So. If anyone would like to go, I've got a gentleman here by the door. Just there's a roving microphone coming around as well.
Is it working? Yes.
Yeah, great.
Given that Jersey has an established or is establishing a medicinal cannabis industry, what are the views of candidates on cannabis becoming recreational for over 21s?
Could I just take your name, please, sir? And then if we've got a second question, and then, as I said, we'll take them in pairs. We'll take it sort of geographically at this end of the room, so the microphone. There's a lady in the front row here in a lilac-coloured top. Thank you.
My name's Anne Harris. I've been living in the parish for 29 years. And welcome to St Mary, to all of you, because I realise you don't live here. My question is simply, what two issues do you believe most bother the residents of St Mary, and what is your position on them?
Great. Thank you very much, Anne. Right, we're going to start as before. We'll have a different starter each time, but for this question, for a 1.5 minute answer, Deputy Hulin.
No.
Oh, okay. We're starting the moving down the line. Fair enough. We'll start with our second candidate and then move down from there. David.
Yes, cannabis, Helen. Actually, medicinal cannabis I'm very much in favour of, particularly for people suffering from multiple sclerosis and other diseases. It's a very useful drug. Hemp as a whole is a phenomenal crop to grow. It's extremely good for the soil. It's a very ancient crop. It's very useful. It's used in clothes, paper. It's in your car bumpers, car fascias and everything. It's a phenomenal material. But I'm not in favour of legalised cannabis use for recreational use. I've been a member of the Honorary Police. I've seen what drugs and drink can do to families, to individuals, and I'm sorry, I'm just not in favour of that at all. And Yes, blimey, that's a big one. Actually, on the doorstep, most people are telling us that what they're most concerned about in the parish is population growth and also housing for their family and their children, etc. And population growth, the Jersey Liberal Conservatives want to have a very careful look at population growth and how we can manage it. We know that we need to import medicinal skills and other things, and we also know that people are leaving the island. Medical skills, sorry, not medicinal. We know that people are leaving the island because of housing. Actual housing, yes, we do need to build far more houses for our young people that they can afford, and it's very difficult to afford them.
Great. Thank you, David. Now moving on to Lucy Stevenson.
It's flashing, is that when it's working? First of all, Alan, on your question, I have engaged with the Prohibition Lobby Group, and I would describe my stance at the moment as open to discussing the issue further, and I believe they're happy with putting a lot of candidates into that basket at the moment. I understand there's lots of different changes going on around the world, particularly in Europe, to do with cannabis, and actually we probably are going to see that conversation start to open up a little bit more. I'm very open to the conversation. I'm not committing either way at this stage at the moment. And on your question, I'm going to try and be very quick and answer it two ways if I can. I know there's a number of local issues in St Mary. One thing that's come up repeatedly on doorsteps is community cohesion and trying to bring everybody together in the parish. And I know the quarry is an ongoing issue that probably will come back in the future as well, in the not too distant future. Speeding into the valley is another one. When it comes to island-wide issues as well, actually, it depends which area in the parish you go to. It's been quite different. But I know healthcare is on there. The hospital comes up on every single doorstep. I actually didn't think it would. I will admit that right now. I thought we were perhaps past that, but I know that that is a big issue of contention for everybody at the moment. Housing, again, where are people going to live? You've got some fields that have been rezoned. That's going to be a conversation to have.
Great, thank you, Lucy. And next we're moving on to Ian Gorst.
Thank you. I should have said that it's most peculiar to be watched over by Her Majesty this evening when I was doing my opening speech, but pleasant nonetheless. Alan, I am a traditionalist, so it's not going to surprise you that I don't support the legalisation of cannabis for recreational use. I do think that there is value in the work that's being undertaken around medicinal cannabis and where it can be proved that it gives benefit, and I think we're starting to see that now, but I wouldn't want to go any further. Parish issues, and maybe I'll follow in Lucy's footsteps and say they fall into two categories. The issues that parishioners are worried about island-wide are, as Lucy said, spending, waste, hospital and housing for young people. I think more parochial issues are about being appropriately represented in this new system. Many people have said to me, where is our voice going to be? Who is going to stand up for us in St Mary? Because none of you live in St Mary. You alluded to it in your question. So that's something that I think needs to be addressed and will be addressed, and I commit to addressing it. The other two issues are keeping the parish special and green and maintaining its uniqueness, and dealing with speeding issues where they occur. Thank you.
I was just going to clarify with Alan, your question was specifically about medicinal cannabis, was it? No. Oh, fine, okay. I just wanted to clarify that, so before we move on. Our next person to answer these questions is Christina Moore.
Thank you both for the question. So Alan, on the issue of recreational cannabis, I have recently been educating myself because I am aware that there is something of a debate internationally on this point. And for me, what is really important about drug use is that 10% of people who use drugs tend to have a problem. And it's those 10% who actually need to be cared for in a different way. And there's a very interesting Portuguese model that provides provides very focused and targeted care for that group of people that helps them to smooth over the issues that they are taking drugs to avoid generally. And so I think that that would have to be in place first before any steps were taken to introduce recreational drug use in a regulated fashion. And as Lucy says, I'll probably leave it at that. And in terms of representation for the parish, I would agree with all of the candidates about the general island-wide matters. Everybody wants to know how we're going to deal with the effects of the cost of living and how we're going to move forward and ensure that we maintain a cohesive society, one where everyone can prosper and enjoy a good quality of life. And I think that's absolutely got to be a focus for every candidate across the island. But of course, you want to be represented by people. I mentioned in my speech that we should have a constituency office and be based here in the parish to show our commitment to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And next up is Lyndon Farnham.
Well, thank you, Alan. I'm very supportive of the medicinal cannabis industry. I think there's a real opportunity for Jersey to create something that we can export that will provide global benefits from a medicinal point of view. I'm sort of open-minded, but I would take some persuading that legalization of cannabis for recreational purposes would be the right thing to do. But I do predict that will be a debate the new Assembly will be having, because I know there are mixed thoughts on the matter. Speaking to people in St Mary, I find the issues tend to be largely similar to the people we're speaking to in other parishes. There's immediate concern about the cost of living, of course, the ongoing housing affordability crisis. St Mary parishioners tend to be particularly protective, and quite rightly so, of the countryside. I think many of us, Christina, brought an amendment to the island plan which was successful, which protected the countryside out here. It's about keeping St Mary and the country parishes as special as possible, but finding that balance with the demand for housing, especially for our young people. The other big issue I'm getting is health, and I speak to a lot of people, and I get the same thing. They bring up the hospital, but they bring it up and they say to me, get it done. We've wasted enough time and enough money. Let's just build it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lyndon. And Helen Evans now.
Thank you. On cannabis, we've set out in our Reform Jersey manifesto that we do support the decriminalisation of cannabis, and though we haven't made it explicit in the manifesto, we would certainly agree with you that there should be a minimum age limit for that. The reason for that is that there is a growing body of evidence that criminalisation, in fact, adds to rather than mitigates the harms of drug use. And I would say also that we would support decriminalisation, but we also want to see the restoration of what we used to have and we don't have anymore, which is a substance misuse strategy for the island, which would include not only cannabis, but also alcohol and tobacco. And that's kind of lapsed and it needs to come back. And within that context, yes, we would want to decriminalise cannabis. Question about St Mary's concerns is a big one. So I'm not going to address things like affordable housing and cost of living that are shared more widely. I'm going to hone down on a couple of local things, if I may. I think the quarry expansion is something a lot of people have raised with me, and I'm aware the owner has bought land. It's likely to come back, and I would oppose it if it does. Bus service, not going down to Clode de l'Arsenal and no service to Kennervay, we could address when the contract with Liberty Bus comes up in the next 4 years. And there's no doubt whatever that there is a lot of concern about the changes to the system. And I would concur with what others have said, that we need to make it work. Whichever 4 of us have elected, we need to work together to represent all 3 parishes, and I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you, Helen. And finally, for this brace of questions, Roland Hewlin.
I'm known as the tall one in the Assembly, which means I'm further away from the microphone, but I will try standing this time. I'm totally supportive of medicinal cannabis. I've seen the benefits firsthand in many, many occasions, many instances. However, what worries me is Jersey has made 2,000 prescriptions for medicinal cannabis. Put that in perspective, there's 10,000, only 10,000 in the UK. What I have learnt with those prescriptions from GPs is a lot of those prescriptions have been abused. So basically, get your prescription, take half, sell the other half and make a profit. That has deeply concerned me. Now, what I was going to do was bring a proposition to the Assembly to have medicinal cannabis to be included on the free list, the prescriptions free list. I was persuaded not to do it because of the abuse. Now, therefore, I'm now very much of an open mind. Previously, I would probably say, yeah, medicinal cannabis, recreational control, yes. But I've been worried about the abuse that's been taken place. And therefore, I'm withdrawing that for the time being until further evidence comes to fore. The issues are always the same: population, housing, hospital, health, cost of living. Locally, it's representation. I'm getting that on most doorsteps. And therefore, on the, I started my campaign for the first 3 days. I solely devoted that to St Mary's because I wanted to make that gesture to you that I wanted to support St Mary's going forward. Speeding comes up on a regular basis, and it's well documented that I supported to have the residual land not rezoned. Thank you very much.
If we could, do we have another question? Yes, gentleman with the microphone, I'll start with you. Yes, if you could give your name and question, please.
Yeah, Jack Rondell. I'd like to ask the candidates how they hope to support the younger generation on being able to afford rents and buying properties in Jersey. You know, I think it's brilliant that we're supporting the younger generation financially going to university, but I've got a lot of friends and know of a lot of young people that are going to university on our money and then they're not being able to simply afford to come back to Jersey. So that finance is then supporting other businesses in England or elsewhere. So my question is, how do you support the younger generation to afford rents and housing on the island? Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jack. And we have a gentleman just by the speaker here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Bauer. As the parish has no deputy living in the parish, we will now rely heavily on our new constable to represent the assistance of your deputy. What are your views of constables being in the States and why?
Great, thank you both for those questions, and which will be answered first of all by Lucy Stevenson.
Thank you for both questions. I'm not sure I've quite got long enough to answer them all. Jack, on your question, first of all, my approach to the housing situation that we have is that we need a blended approach. To me, it's not just about building loads of new houses. That's just not sustainable. It's not going to work. We need to look at all the options. And between us, candidates over this election have got lots of options on the table. There's talk of shared equity schemes, rent to buy, all sorts. We need to make sure where we are building, we're building the right size homes. A bugbear of mine, for example, is that we often, as first-time buyers, we use our first-time buyer stamp duty on perhaps, if we're lucky enough to be able to buy one, on a flat. What happens when you want to buy a family home? It then becomes even more unachievable. So we need to look at all the options on the table and have a really good, productive conversation with the new Assembly, and that needs to happen quickly. It can't just be another report that sits on a shelf, as we've seen happen so often. On the second question, on the constables, if you'd have asked me that question 4 years ago, I'd have said that I'm of the view that we are moving to a system where we are electing individuals broadly based on an equal number of members, and therefore I would not support constables staying in the States. However, we have had a thank you for that. We have had a referendum on the matter. The public voted to keep the constables in the States. We have also got a new system in which I feel that we may need constables more than ever. So at the moment, I am going to see how this next 4 years play out and see if my opinion changes, and perhaps I should speak to this lady about her views as well later.
Great, thank you, Lucy. And next is Ian Gorst.
Thank you. Jack, you hit the nail on the head with that problem. There is a loss of hope in the community, and particularly amongst our young people. There are some technical things that we need to do in government. We need to restructure the responsibilities of the housing minister so they can actually make change. They've got responsibility for state-owned land, which is the best opportunity to put on first-time buyers. They're able to also have oversight of SOJDC and work with Andium. They are technical things, but they'll make a massive difference to delivery. We also have got £1 billion in the rainy day fund. We've got £2 billion in the social security fund. That £3 billion is invested around the globe. We get the financial benefit. It's about time we invested some of that money locally in housing so that our young people get the investment benefit and the states get the financial benefit, and we partner together. That's going to unlock some of the affordability issues. I come then to the constable issue. One of the reasons why I'm passionate about the reintroduction of senators, and I know we waste time talking about ourselves in the States, is because I fundamentally believe if we don't bring senators back, the next States member to be axed will be the constables. We're already hearing, we heard it after the decision, that this is just a step to get rid of constables. We cannot do it. We must stand up for them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Christina Moore.
Thank you. Jack, the younger generation, Ian used the word hope, and that's exactly the word I was going to use as well. You need hope, and we need to think about you and delivering housing when we're taking decisions. If we look at the hospital as an example, that decision about the site has forgotten about the impact upon housing. So if we were to look at Overdale in a different way, we wouldn't have had to have put people out of their homes and into an already overheated private sector, and we could think about providing a garden village up at Overdale, because we've now got the Jersey Water site available, and also the old Lake Ennevé school would become available for housing, and we wouldn't have to wait for that 6 years down the track, which is what we're being told currently. So I would prioritise your needs and also the needs of our older generation as well, who need opportunities to downsize in all of our thinking, because there's always a consequence to a decision, and we must be aware of them. In relation to the constables, I think this new system actually will strengthen the role of the constables. I think that they will become the linchpins of the community, that they already are anyway. I've always been a defender of the constables and proudly supported the Option B campaign and the referendum yes campaign. And so I would definitely remain in that camp. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jack. I just wanted to say that consolidating the whole health estate at Overdale frees up about 30 different sites around the island, and that frees up far more land for housing than would be available at the Overdale site. My resolution for affordable housing in the manifesto for young people, first of all, we need to deliver on the island plan what the island plan has done before, has agreed, because we failed to do that in the past, produce new homes. But most young people I speak to could probably afford a mortgage, a longer-term mortgage, but they can't get together the deposit. Ian's right, we should use some of the money, the hundreds of millions we're making every year in investment returns, to put together a fund to create longer-term loan scheme, shared equity, home deposit assistance to get young people on the housing ladder. In relation to constables, well, I have to be quick. We have the States Assembly. We don't have an upper house. We don't have devolved assemblies or county councils, parish councils, town councils. We have the States Assembly. That's why we have three different types of member. We have the Conatable, which represent our local government, the parishes. Deputies represent constituencies, and of course, senators can represent the whole island and work without fear or favour of conflict from parish interest. That's all been cast aside. We've lost our parish deputy, we've lost the senator, we must keep the constables. Thank you.
Great. Helen Evans.
Thank you. Firstly, on young people, housing is clearly a big issue. I can't do it justice in time value. We've set that out in our manifesto, our Housing Crisis Action Plan. Building affordable housing on government-owned sites should help, as should rent stabilisation, a rent tribunal. The other part I would like to address is actually the current benefit system prevents, in most circumstances, people under 25 from claiming the housing benefit element of income support, and I think that's something we need to look at as well, because I'm not at all happy presumption that people should live in their parental home up to the age of 25. On the question of constables, I'm standing as candidate for Reform Jersey. It's in our manifesto and it's a long-standing commitment of Reform Jersey that the constables shouldn't sit in the States. And the reason for that is because we as a party are committed to equal representation, which we believe to be a key tenet of democracy, so that everybody in the island who votes, their vote carries equal weight. And it's very difficult to devise a system that keeps the constables and achieves that when the parishes have such widely different populations. But I want to make it clear that while we don't think the constables should sit in the States, we're certainly not going to get rid of the constables. We recognise the fundamentally important role of the constables in the parish, and we would have no objection to someone who was a constable wishing to stand as a district deputy as well. Keep the constables, but not in the States under the reform policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Two to go on this one. Roland Hewlin.
Jack, yes, this is coming up, quite rightly so, absolutely everywhere. I think the first thing you've got to do is work out the supply and demand paradigm of properties. We have not built enough properties in the last 10 or 15 years that we knew we should have built. We have let that down at every stage. Why has that happened? The planning process is slow, chunky and inefficient. The decision-making process of the Assembly is slow, chunky and inefficient. I'm sure you looked at the Bridging Island plan when we committed to develop or approve 600 homes on green zones. Because of the way we went through each individual field in turn and the NIMBYs cropped up, we end up only doing 375. So we let down 225 families or homes in that particular area. Deposits, yes, I understand, and I understand that interests are currently low, not for much longer, and therefore mortgages are affordable, provided you can get a deposit together. I get all of that. Saturday morning, the Jersey Alliance are hosting an event, check it on social media, for under 35s. That is our statement to how concerned we are about the young and the island and how we must maintain them or encourage them back, whichever way you go there. Constables, I totally support the constables, the community spirit. I'm concerned that there's 8 uncontested elections, and I think only time will tell as to whether they will maintain their position. Personally, I want them to, but I think it's in their hands, quite honestly. Thank you.
Great. And finally, David Benn.
Yes, Jack, thank you for that question. I did address it slightly in my previous answer. The Jersey Liberal Conservatives are very aware of this problem, and it's a very big problem. Unfortunately, the House has been remiss in its attack on housing over the last 15, 20 years even. It really has fallen down, and our young people are suffering. When you're paying a rent of £2,000 a month, for a house, how on earth can you save for a deposit? How can you do that? And when you're at university, how can you save for a deposit? So we would favour not having necessarily a deposit, but having 100% equity with shared equity with the housing people, so that the young people can afford a house. Constables. Oh, and also going back, we can build cheaper houses using new technology. Constables. Over my dead body do you get rid of the constables. The constables are the most important part of this island. They are the cohesion that keeps this island together. And I've been part of 2 parishes. I've seen 4 constables working. The work they do that is not seen and then it's taken into the house is incredible. They are the most central part of this island, and we absolutely must keep them. And if we lose them, it'll be the saddest day this island ever goes through.
I was just going to ask for the mic here, Jack, and I was just going to give the other. Well, if we've got, we'll do a couple more at this end, but don't worry at the other end. We will come down to you for the next set.
My name is Sue Bagley. Live in St Mary. And I'm just interested in how you see the future of the Opera House, which has been left to virtually rot. And not only that, but of course the position of the arts in island life.
Great, thank you. And we have another question just next door.
Harvey Goddell. Bearing in mind that around half of the people living in Jersey weren't born here, do you have any immigration policies that could help ease the cost of living and price of houses in the island to lower that supply and demand issue that we're definitely facing at the moment? Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we're going to start these answers to these two questions. To my right, Ian Gorst.
Thank you, Sue. So I don't have all of the details of what happened with the fiscal stimulus. No doubt Senator Farnham is going to give us that detail later. But I do take the view with the Opera House. There isn't actually too much point in just spending £200,000 to £500,000 now to do a bit of repair. What we really need to do is allocate the appropriate amount of money, which I understand is a few £1,000,000, take slightly longer, get it back properly up on its feet so that we can have a proper lease and property holdings can look after it properly for generations to come and not go through the same circle that we've kept going through. That's really important. Arts, for the first time, under these government plans, have now got 1% of state's income being spent on them. Is it being spent in the right place? That's a very good question. I think there needs to be more coordination, which the new arts strategy is going to help to do. Again, Senator Farnham knows more about that, but good progress and good work is being done there. I'm not sure that the cost of living crisis is directly an immigration issue. It's exacerbated by the fact that businesses are really struggling to get staff. Every business owner I've spoken to, from finance industry to pharmacists to cafes, they are all struggling for staff. There is a balance and there's a conversation that we need to have because currently those increased salaries are causing costs to increase. But it's a bigger issue. In my manifesto, I talk more about it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now Christina Moore.
Thank you, Sue, for raising the important question of the arts. It's vital that we have art and cultural activities available to islanders in a variety of places. And just down the road at the barracks, Art House Jersey have been doing some amazing things. And I hope that everybody has been using that facility because it's right on your doorstep. And I would like to certainly see more of that around the island because it is very important. I think the issue with the Opera House is an example of the states over a number of years failing to maintain properties in all sorts of guises. And that's something that we really have to resolve. We must invest in our capital and look after the assets that we do have so that we can properly invest in new ones as well. But it's a great shame to let things go to waste as they have. Population, Harvey, again, I would, well, in my manifesto, I have set out how we should have a People and Skills Commission because we need a real-time look at how many people we have here and what accommodation there is available for them, and also the skills gaps that we have within our community, because at the moment, people have actually claiming that we've seen a decline in population slightly. We've got an ageing population, so you can see clearly when the census is compared to what it was 10 years ago, those under the age of 45 have declined, whereas those numbers are growing over the age of 45. So we have to resolve that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And next is Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you very much. In relation to the Opera House moving into 2019, plans were underway with the Opera House Board to start the programme of refurbishment. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit and that held everything up. Fiscal stimulus money was allocated, but it soon became apparent that that wasn't enough. So we went back and we managed to pry another £2 million out of the Treasury to do the job properly. That's inside and out. That work started. It is, as Ian said, unfortunately going to take longer. So we're looking at July 23 for the Opera House work to be completed. Under the current government, there's been a huge increase in arts funding, and I can't give the government credit for that. That was agreed by the states on the back of a proposition from Deputy Montfort-Tadier when he was working as an assistant minister with me in the economic development department. So we're seeing between now and 2024, the arts funding goes from about 4 million to almost 8 million you'll have to give me a little bit of leeway on those figures, but it's a significant increase. Deputy Morrow's now the Assistant Minister with responsibility, and he's produced a new art strategy, and we've also just produced a new heritage strategy. They're available as part of my manifesto at my website if you want to have a look at them. We have to manage our population control better. I think that we have seen a decrease in the population post-Brexit and post-pandemic. Sorry I haven't got time to answer your question fully. Happy to speak to you after and give you my ideas on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lyndon. Helen Evans.
Thank you. The Opera House has got into a very sorry state, and it does reflect the importance of being proactive in maintaining buildings. And I think one of the pitfalls in a lot of organisations and in government, as in other organisations, is sometimes too much time and attention is given to high-profile, quite kind of glitzy projects, and actually maintenance and keeping business as usual going is really important. Certainly, I think we need to get the Opera House back, and it would probably cost less if we hadn't allowed it to deteriorate in the first place, but we need to do it. Lyndon has kindly referred to my Reform Jersey colleague, Monty Tadier, in securing increased funding for the arts, and I'd certainly support that. And I think it's a good thing for community cohesion, and indeed for sense of community generally. On the second question about... Sorry,
Immigration issues.
Immigration, I'm sorry, I've lost it. Second question about immigration. Of course, we're a little limited by the fact that we only get a snapshot of population once every 10 years when there's a census. We don't have real-time information on population. I wonder if there might be a case for an interim census after a 5-year interval, because it's quite hard to see why the population's a bit less than we were expecting. Is it because people left because of Brexit, or is it because the estimates were not entirely accurate all the way through? So perhaps the census at 5 years is worth considering. We did it in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. And I think, finally, we need to look at licences and give licences where we really need staff, and think about who gets licences. Thank you.
Great, and next, Roland Hewlin.
Sue, firstly, when you mention my name, it doesn't necessarily go with the arts. But one of the joys of working with a team of like-minded people, I have people who are passionate about the arts for them myself. And in our manifesto, one of our priorities is to redevelop the Opera House. And it is also quite clear the link between the arts and well-being and mental health are very, very strong. And so I'm totally supportive of that. You asked me in a minute to talk about the work that I've been doing for 2 years on migration and population. I haven't got a chance of doing it. What I have reminded the Assembly on many occasions is there's only one thing worse than a growing population for a small island community, and that's a shrinking population. And I think we have seen there's a tendency, we haven't got the real-time data that was mentioned down there that we need to have in order to make informed decisions about how we manage population. Difficult controlling population, we need to have managed population. We need to ensure we know who is in, who is out, who is here, what they actually need insofar as education, as far as healthcare is concerned, as far as housing. The right housing, not just build more houses. We need to know, do people want 3-bedroom houses, 2-bedroom flats? We have no idea of that, and that's why I may have got panned for it with the population policy, but I insisted on having data, and I've got a plan in place to have data within the next 4 years. So instead of doing finger in the air, which we've been doing for 20 years and we've been doing it badly, we can actually make informed decisions going forward. So I haven't answered the question, I know, but I'd be delighted to talk to you about it. It's a subject I've become quite passionate about. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next is David Ben.
Sue, thank you for that question. The Opera House, I think, is dear to all of us. We've all been there and seen many fabulous performances, the pantomime, musicals, and there's a lot that goes on there. When you own a house, you look after it, and it hasn't been looked after for many years. Since Mr. Ray passed away, I think, because it was Dick Ray that put his hand in his own pocket and paid for it for many years, we haven't looked after it at all, and that's quite remissible of the estates. But of course, it's also happening with Fort Regent now as well, and so it won't just be the Opera House, it's going to be Fort Regent. I believe they've started work, because Pierre Horsfall's chairman of the Opera House committee, isn't he? And he told me the other day that they have actually started. He's quite excited about that. Immigration, it's an enormous problem, isn't it? In the Jersey Liberal Conservatives, we're very keen on training. And we had a meeting this morning with the building industry. They are now training, so that instead of bringing people in as tradesmen, we train our local people. And that's so much better than bringing people in, especially civil servants. But there's no reason why we shouldn't train our local people. Now, obviously, when it comes to immigration, we need to bring in people for the tourist industry, because that's a very seasonal industry. We're hoping that it can be made more all year round, but you do need to bring in, and we certainly need to bring in people for the agricultural industry. But maybe that's changing as well. So, but training is key to immigration as well.
Thank you, David. And finally, for this round, Lucy Stevenson.
Thank you. Yes, on the Opera House, as others have said, the work is underway. I believe that it's been delayed for longer, and there's going to be a discussion about funding for the next part. That's going to be the important thing to keep an eye on. Lots of people on this table have said, yes, let's fund it. So maybe we need to make sure that we hold them to that as well. One thing I would say on it as well, we've got Fort Regent. They've talked about arts and culture up at Fort Regent. There are other areas. The Arts Centre needs investment as well. So I think really there is going to be some work perhaps to be done to really champion the Opera House as a site and make sure it stays at the heart of our community where it should be. On immigration, as others have said, going last, I risk repeating lots of things, but really we need the data. How can we have a policy when we can't measure what we need to be doing, or if we're achieving what we're setting out to do? The one thing I would add to what others have said is actually I would like our conversation about immigration to be a healthy one. Sorry to pick on your words at the beginning, but people that aren't born in Jersey, I wasn't born in Jersey. There are lots of people in our island who have lived here for many, many years who weren't born in Jersey. And I would like to see, as I feel like we've had very divisive conversations actually around population as a community. And that makes me feel very uncomfortable as an islander. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lucy. We're going to take some more questions. We're going to try and move down towards the middle. If we can just quickly pass the microphones, just coming across the back. There's a gentleman just the other side of the camera in the back row in front of the... yes, there we go. Well, no, that's fine, and we'll carry on down.
We just had a mention of civil servants. Are the current candidates comfortable with the growth in administrative civil servants following Charlie Parker's arrival? Leave out the pandemic ones who might reduce. And with the structure that Charlie Parker introduced, which is, to the best of my knowledge, is still in place. And what are they going to do about it?
Great. May I take your name, please, sir?
Auburn Ashburn.
Thank you. And then we had another one just down to the your left. Yes.
Hi, Susanna Rolls from St Mary's. I would just like to know, if you're not standing for Chief Minister, who you would support, and I'd really would like a name, please.
Great, thank you. We're rotating the around, so first to answer those questions is to my left, Christina Moore.
Oberon, thank you for the question. The growth of civil servants is a matter of massive public consternation, I think. We've seen spending rise incredibly, and so something needs to be done. We have to get a grip on this important matter. It's thankful that we have a new chief executive, and I think a new chief executive coupled with a new government can look at this and reorganise the structure to ensure that we focus on achieving solutions. We cannot allow a deterioration in our frontline services, because we actually need to ensure that we're recruiting and retaining nurses, teachers, doctors, police officers, fire officers, all of those good people who keep us healthy and safe. but we need to ensure that the structure behind them and the civil service is smooth but focused on solutions and delivering for the public. On Susanna's question, I have announced that I would like to stand for Chief Minister if I am elected into the Assembly. I'll be seeking that vote from those who are elected around with me. I feel that I can deliver a different future for the island. We can get the island back on track, focus on public spending, and focus on you, the people, and your priorities. We must tackle the cost of living and the housing crisis and give hope to our young. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And next is Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you, Oberon. As I said in my opening statement, we need improved management of the public sector and a smaller government structure. We need to reduce the number of senior civil servants and put that resource into frontline staff, health staff especially, care workers and all the staff that we have great shortages of the moment. So it's a restructuring required. I would caveat and say that I'm privileged to work with some excellent professional civil servants. We like to bash the civil service, but the majority of them are good, hard-working people, and we should support them and give them the leadership they need at times. I'm going to, Suzanne, the question on Chief Minister, I'm going to read you something that I sent into a JP questionnaire today, and they said, who should be the next Chief Minister? And I wrote, someone with good experience of dealing with difficult issues and with the ability to work collaboratively, unite the Assembly and the island, and rebuild confidence and trust. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Great, and next is Helen Evans.
Thank you. Certainly the growth of, as you put it, administrative parts of the civil service has attracted a lot of criticism, and I think for good reason. And I think it's not just about administrative, but it is particularly at senior levels, and particularly recruitment off island. And people are asking quite rightly, what is so specialist about management, administrative, civil service roles that means we cannot train people locally to do them? And that's exactly the right question to be asking. We need better strategic and forward planning. There are some types of recruitment, hospital doctors is an obvious example, where we will need to bring people in off island. For senior management roles in civil services, that should be very rare. We need to review the whole structure of the civil service and how it works with the allocation of ministerial responsibilities as well. And the civil service should not be calling the shots. It is the government that needs to take responsibility for making decisions, and the civil service can become a bit of a self-fulfilling thing. On the second question, as to, Chief Minister, I'm a candidate for Reform Jersey. Clearly we have party leader Sam Messock, who, depending on the composition of the Assembly, we might consider putting forward as a candidate for Chief Minister. If not, if there isn't sufficient support for that, we would want to get behind a candidate who will give as much as we can, as much as we can get of our manifesto commitments to the public to be taken forward as policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Roland Hewlin.
Oh, so it is gone. Jersey is a big business. It's a £1 billion business. It employs 7,186 people currently. And the onus is on politicians in order to manage that big business properly. And the Jersey Alliance are putting together a great group of talented people who will have the strength in order to drive that one through and make sure the direction, proper direction, is given to those. I agree with Lyndon. I've worked with some fantastic civil servants. They need our help and encouragement to ensure that we work with them. We work with Susanna Wiley, who is coming through as fantastic new chief executive, in order to streamline the civil servant for the benefit of us all. That is, and the other thing that really gets me is local development. And we go back to the young Jack. Why do you want to work hard, bust a gut in order to climb your way up the tree, just to have somebody come in to parachuted in, when it's perfectly acceptable that that person may have 70%, 60%, 70% of the skills, it doesn't matter, but with a mentoring program to get them up to the 90% required could easily be put in place. That absolutely grates with me, personally. The Chief Minister, Mark Bodiat, a very, very capable Jersey-born person, educated in Jersey, has had a varied career around the world. He's the political lead of the City of London. He's the chair of Link. He has run big businesses. He's got political exposure. He's a passionate author about population and housing in the island in Jersey. And I personally think he will be an amazing person. If we can all get together and vote for him, he'd be an amazing person to lead this island through the next 4 years. Thank you.
Great, and next we have David Benn.
I run two parts of that civil service one. First part is we have some phenomenal civil service who work very hard, local people who work very hard. When you talk to them, when you go and see them, they do their work as well as they possibly can. And I think they get a bad press very often. Why we bring in civil servants from the other side of the water is completely beyond me, because we have the talent in the island. And just as one example, years ago we had a perfect candidate for Chief Officer of the Police. Absolutely perfect. He was trained up, and at the last minute they brought somebody else in. How does that work? How does that make sense? Because it's demoralising to the local police, and it's the same in the hospital and every other department. They are demoralised at the moment, totally demoralised. But we have some phenomenal people there as well. Now, our Chief Minister, we are not happy with the One Gov. Jersey Liberal Conservatives do not like the One Gov at all. We need a smaller government, and we need a government that works. Chief Minister, well, obviously, it's Philip Ballish, Sir Philip Ballish. He has been bailiff of the island. He's been twice. He's been a member of the States. He has great experience, enormous gravitas. When one speaks to him, he speaks with authority. He considers very quickly, and he speaks very well. He is the man to lead us. He's the man to lead the House for the future. Sir Philip Ballish. Thank you.
Great. Lucy Stevenson.
Thank you. We were told that OneGov would give us a smaller, more efficient public service, and it's grown by many hundreds of people and an awful lot of money. In fact, our outgoing interim chief executive said it's unsustainable. Now, that's the key word there, isn't it? Unsustainable. So we need to change the way we do things. I don't suggest we go out and we make a lot of people redundant overnight. We can't do that, but we need to change our thinking and our attitudes. As others have said, succession planning is key to that, because actually when OneGov and a certain chief executive took over, by getting rid of an awful lot of people, either willingly or other ways, actually we took out a whole tranche of people who would have been our next level of leaders as well. Also, just one thing to say, on that the accountability as well has been lost along the way, adding extra layers of management in there. I think that's where we've seen some of the real troubling growth, perhaps. Susanna, on your question, it's a simple one for me, and it's Senator Christina Moore. I am a member of Vote.je group. That doesn't mean that I have to say that. In fact, we haven't even actually had that conversation as a group. We're not a political party, and we are free to make our own decisions. But I do think she has the experience both as a minister and leading scrutiny. And actually, it would send quite a clear message that we are going to change and we are going to reset for our island.
Thank you. And finally for this round, Ian Gorst.
Thank you, Owen. Any minister that tells you, and I've told you, things that I've achieved this evening, it's not actually them achieving it, it's the great team of civil servants who stand right behind them, do what they get asked to do, provide impartial, independent advice, and then get things done. Minister is only as good as the team that they are surrounded by. And I pay tribute to those civil servants in my departments of external relations and financial services who've done a fantastic job over the last 4 years, and I'd love to keep working with them over the next 4 years. Your direct question was a direct question, and my answer to that direct question is no. That civil servant was recruited to cut the cost of government and to reduce the overall number of people employed. And what happened? We got a new government in, and the reverse happened. It's really disappointing. People should do what they're recruited for, and we shouldn't be afraid then of holding them to account if and when they don't. Susanna, I'm going to disappoint you. Previously, I've always stood on these platforms for the last 3 years and said, I'll vote for myself. I'm not doing that anymore because I don't want that job. I know how difficult it is. But what I think this time is different and why I can't give you a name is because of what's going to happen with parties. We've heard it here, these two excellent candidates. We've also heard, actually, we might be better off just with an independent again.
Great. Do we have? We had a question, yes, the gentleman at the back who kindly gave way last time. Sir, your time has come.
My name's Peter Munns. I live in St Mary's, but unfortunately I was born in St Wands. Not had this subject yet. It's more than one question, for which I apologise to everybody in the room, including the candidates. But is Jersey's net zero carbon emission target early enough? Are we going to meet it? And are you ever going to diversify our £3 billion investment out of dirty carbon investments? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have another question in this? Yes, right next door.
Yes, my name's Elena Moran. My question is, so many of the candidates have talked about the cost of living crisis and all about how they want to support younger people. But Jersey has a flat rate of income tax of 20%, which means that people who are earning hundreds of thousands of pounds a year are only paying 20%, and people who can just about afford to pay the bills at the end of the month are also paying 20% of their income in tax, assuming they're over the marginal rate relief. Do the candidates think that it is both appropriate and fair that we have such an unprogressive system of income tax?
Great. Thank you for those questions. And if I've kept tally correctly, it's Lyndon Farnham is starting up.
I thought it was Senator Moore's turn again, but I'll take it. Thank you. It's worth a try. Net zero, is the target realistic? I'm sorry, I'm not sure. But if we don't set ourselves a target, we just keep kicking the can down the road. Could it be sooner? Possibly, yes, but there is a huge financial cost involved in achieving it. I support the ambition. We'll do everything we can to get there. My contribution to that, for what it's worth, was the attempt to introduce a far greater number of marine protected areas to create sustainable fisheries to stop damaging fisheries such as bottom dredging and trawling. I failed at that, but I shall keep trying, because I think the carbon and the environmental benefits from protecting those large areas of our waters, whilst keeping our fisheries sustainable, is really important, and that will help us to get to those targets sooner. Somewhere between 70 and 80% of our tax is paid by about 20% of the population. And so whilst I think we should ensure that especially lower household income earners are taxed appropriately, or increase allowances for those levels, especially during times of high inflation, I would be reluctant in increasing tax much more for the higher earners, because they already pay the bulk of the taxes. Our tax needs to be low, broad and fair. If we continue to increase taxes for the higher earners, or the middle income earners and higher, it's not just the higher earners, it's the middle income earners that are bearing the burden of the tax. So I'm not in favour of increasing taxes. We don't need to. We need to take better control of our spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen Evans.
Thank you. Question about net zero. Yes, we definitely support it. Should it be earlier, perhaps? But it isn't, and I think it is achievable for the dates we've set, and we need to work for that. And an important part of that is ensuring a just transition, support to households to convert from fossil fuels to electric heating, for example, to ensure that the financial burden of transition costs doesn't fall on those who can't afford it. And certainly also in terms of energy sovereignty, security, we need to generate more of our own, and we would support a wind farm. It's set out in our manifesto, but clearly yes. Second question about tax, also a big one, also set out in the Reform Jersey manifesto. We very definitely do support moving to a more progressive tax system. More specifically, we would put everybody on the marginal rate calculation, give the allowances to everybody on all incomes, and lower the marginal rate from 26 to 25%, which would reduce the tax paid by middle-income households and increase the tax paid by higher earners. And we would also scrap the cap on the upper earnings limit for Social Security for employers' contributions and the long-term care, and that would raise revenue on people earning more than £250,000 a year. Thank you.
Great. Back to the far end now. Roland Tulin.
I need your thumb,
It's just
David.
a touch. It's a touch.
It's magic. It's magic. It's magic. Net zero. I've said in the Assembly we have to play our part. Every little bit matters. I think it's a Tesco advert. I can't remember. However, what concerns me is we have two sides to this. We also have other challenges, and this net zero is totally unfunded. We don't know how much it's going to cost. But we have other issues that have been raised by the young, cost of living and everything else. Another thing that concerns me is whilst we could spend an enormous amount of money playing our part, India is the third largest consumer of power in the world. It is still building coal power stations and has a strategy to do so until 2035. That's building and investing in them. America and China are no better. And that's what deeply concerns us. The rest of the world clearly don't care, and we do. How do we get around it? We mentioned tidal. I've been doing some work on tidal power. The bridge, when tidal power can work for 175,000 people, including Guernsey, and the cost of the availability, the deliverability and the reliability is going to cross over very, very soon, and affordability. We need to be ready for that. It's that sort of long-term sustainable investment that will make us self-sufficient in power for generations to come, which is where I would like to spend my focus. Cost of living, 25% of tax is paid by 3% of people. Sorry, that's taxation. Sorry, apologies.
Great, thank you. Next, David Benn.
Well, mine won't work now.
Magic touch. Oh, sorry.
Net zero. The interesting thing in net zero is that to create the roadmap, 40 people were brought in island-wide. I don't mean brought into the island, but 40 islanders were brought in to do it. And so it's a cross-section of society that decided how it could work. And that's tremendous, because everyone had an input, and it's probably very workable. And actually, we in the JLC think it could perhaps come this way a little bit. It could be before. Because the thing is, if we don't address the environment, then it's not us that's going to be hurt by it. It's not us. It's our children and our grandchildren and their children. Because the environment is the greatest subject that we should be addressing. We can deal with the finances. We can deal with all that. Okay, we can argue in the House. But we can deal with it. Unless we give an enormous effort to the environment, it's future generations that are going to pay for it in a big way. And we have to be aware of that. And what we can't be is evangelistic about it, because that'll put people off. We have to bring everyone together, everyone making an effort, a little effort here and there, insulation, renewables. If you go to France, almost every agricultural building has panels on it. Almost every factory has solar panels on it. They have windmills everywhere. It's fantastic. And we need to do it. On the income tax, no, 20%, it must remain there. And unfortunately, if we move it, it'll be the next bracket that are going to pay most.
Great, thank you. Lucy Stevenson.
Thank you. I I think the important thing to say for me on net zero, and if we're moving there quickly enough and sustainably, is we've got to take people with us on this journey. We can't, environmentalists in the room, you can't do it on your own. And actually that kind of shift in culture and thinking doesn't happen overnight. So I think it is going to take us probably the time that is set actually to get our acts together and to all work together and engage as a community on it. I do have some specific concerns about things like electric car targets that we've set ourselves and moving on to different fuel systems as well. Electric cars, for example, I went round to try and buy one with a family member recently, and most of the garages will not sell you one at the moment, or it's a year's waiting time, or it's 18 months waiting time. If we're going to move the whole island onto it, you know, we may have a problem. Now, and then think about the different changes in boilers and infrastructures there. There's some practical changes that I think it's just going to take time as well. On the tax system, I'd always welcome a review of the system. It's not something that currently at the moment I passionately believe needs changing, but a review is always a healthy thing to do. I appreciate that, that your reference to the middle earners, because low earners are protected, and as we've heard, the top 3% paying 20% of tax as well. The squeezed middle, who are going to be increasingly squeezed actually with the cost of living at the moment. Perhaps I'd like to see other measures to help the middle, catch-all options that really help that area and don't just focus on low earners as well. We need to recognise the challenges there, I think.
That's a new noise there. Next up is Ian Gorst.
Thank you, indeed a new noise. I worked with the Environment Department to have the Paris Agreement extended to Jersey, which means that we now are following the international approach and we're not going half-beam doing our own thing. I think that's the right thing to do. I do think we've got to be pragmatic. The people are talking to me on the...
Sorry, your light wasn't on.
Okay, sorry. Some people are saying to me on the doorstep they want to play their part, but it's just too expensive for them and they're not sure what to do, so we need to be really pragmatic and work with people. I've got to say I'm not in favour of spending a lot of money in 2030 on offsets. I would rather keep that money on island and support islanders to electrify things that they need to, invest in solar panels, get tidal power up and running, get wave power used. We should be focusing on what we can do as an island. When it comes to the 3 billion, we did do a review of that. There's very little. I think it's a matter of just over 100,000 or so, and they've got a plan to disinvest from carbon investments in that 3 million. There's a lot more work that we've got to do in the overall finance and industry, which we are starting to do as well. Right, I want to come back to tax as well, because tax is, to me, an important mechanism to help with the cost of living, because I fundamentally believe money is better off in your pocket than it is in government's pocket. We've got many examples to show that, and I'm in favour of reducing the marginal rate, keeping the 20% rate, but reducing the marginal rate down from 26 to 25%. That will help middle earners. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Christina Moore.
Thank you. So net zero, I have measures in my manifesto to move to a circular economy, a zero waste economy, one where we reduce our use of carbon quickly, particularly through transport and housing, where we use an awful lot of fuel at the moment. And we have the ability with our electrical connections and also the energy of solar available to us. So we should be good citizens of the universe and move forwards as quickly and appropriately as we can as a community. We also, Ian helpfully talked about investments. I think we are being good citizens of the world in our own government investments. But as a finance community as a whole, we also should be flying the flag for green finance, and I think Jersey Finance have begun to do just that, and I fully support their approach there. In terms of taxation and the level of taxation, I am a believer that a low tax environment generates and stimulates growth. It stimulates business and people to push forward and aspire for better. But I do think as a wealthy community that we do have to look after our growing squeezed middle. And we can do that through increasing tax allowances or reducing the marginal rate, one or the other. But we also have to look to reviewing our 0-10 system and look at the corporate tax and how that is balanced out. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we might just be fractionally before, so if it's, perhaps we could have injury time of one last question if there's a burning one here, and there's, the first hand I saw was just in front. So I'll just take one question now and give people 60 seconds, I propose, to our timekeeper for this one.
Oh, good evening. My name is Jean Vibert. LTC, long-term care. If one does not go into a home, what happens to the money we have paid? Is it a form of tax? And how big is our pot at the moment? Thank you.
Great, we're going to do 60 seconds on this, and yes, starting with you. Thank you, Helen Evans.
Just for our own long-term care, but for other people's if we turn out not to need it. So it's a communal rather than an individual thing. I'm afraid I don't know how much there is in the pot at the moment. But I would also say on long-term care, when it was introduced, as I mentioned earlier, it was capped at what is now about £250,000 a year as an earnings threshold. And I don't think that really makes sense, because you're quite right, it is a form of tax, and that is why we propose to scrap that cap, because we don't see any reason why the very highest earners shouldn't continue paying it above that threshold. Thank you.
Thank you. Roland Tulin.
The more I learn about the long-term care fund, the more I am deeply concerned by it. I think you have to look at it as an insurance policy and have to hope that you don't actually need to use it for your own personal well-being and lifestyle. I think it was well-intentioned, but certain things make me concerned. The idea is that at the end of your using it, you should be left with the value of a 3-bedroom home to go towards your estate. Well, that's been frozen at 435k, I believe. Show me a 3-bedroom home for 435k today. That's far more like 800 or 900. I think it is outdated. I've started to get experience of people using it with the parishioners, and I'm very uncomfortable with the persuasion of people to move into the long-term care fund and draw on it without having used all the other care options that are available to them in the island. So I'm uncomfortable. It needs a big look at. And sorry, I don't know how much is in the pot. I apologise.
Thank you. David Benn.
Yes, I don't know how much is in the pot. I don't know if anyone does. It's you know, one of those conundrums. We don't know what's going on in the finance world at the moment. With long-term care, we're all supposed to contribute so that our old age is covered when we get there. You know, and so it's important. But we need to invest more in our community nursing, because they're underfunded at the moment. They're understaffed and they're underfunded. So it's fine investing in long-term care, but who's going to do it if we're not investing in the nursing services that will you know, take care of our long-term care and visit us in our homes if we can remain in our homes? So that's a very serious question, and I think that we do need to look at that. And also, you know, it is a bit of a grey area, isn't it, this long-term care? So we certainly need to look at it.
Lucy Stevenson. We've got 2 lights on.
Thank you, it's fine. Better? Is that working?
No, your neighbour is...
oh, sorry.
I'm still reg, does that matter? Who knows? Yes, look, the long-term care, is it a tax? I'm a journalist, we call a spade, and we argued a lot at the time with the government, and every time we tried to call it a tax, we were reminded it's a charge. Well, it's a ring-fence tax, isn't it? I apologise, I don't know how much is in the pot, but I am aware that there is conversations going on at the moment, some people in this room are very aware of it as well, about the actual amount that's being paid out by the government in hourly rates to providers, and actually there's been an issue there and some not very nice dealings with individuals who are receiving long-term care in the community, and letters sent out demanding extra payments above and beyond the long-term care charge. So I think we have some issues with that fund perhaps, and the Health Minister was on TV yesterday in which he said that actually we may need to take a look at this again, and I think there was even suggestions that we may need to pay more. So we will have that conversation, I think, soon perhaps, judging by what was said.
Thank you. Ian Gorst.
It's true that government produces a piece of legislation, produces a policy, thinks, oh, it's great, and then lets it just wither on the vine. And long-term care is a great policy, actually, because what it does at its heart, it means that islanders don't have to suffer catastrophic costs if they have to go into care, because going into care at any point in one's life can be extremely expensive, and what it does is mitigate it. But what's not happened is that you haven't had the appropriate reviews that Roland and Lucy have just said, to increase the threshold of the value of your house, increase the payout to pay to the care provider. It roughly normally bumbles on about 50 million in the pot, but there's money coming in and out all the time, so I can't give you an absolutely direct figure. So it needs to be reviewed so it continues to be fit for purpose and that islanders continue to have confidence in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Moore.
Thank you for the question. As I think I mentioned in my opening speech, it's really important that we look after people at every time of their life. And we are one of the very few places in the world that's managed to put in place a long-term care fund, which is a good thing because we have that to support those people when they are in need. My scrutiny panel did look at it during one of the government plans, and we actually restrained the government's desire to increase the charge because it is deemed to be a charge rather than a tax. We think that that was the right thing to do because it didn't need to go up at that particular time. There is adequate amount of money in the pot for the people who are coming forward in the coming years. And so we felt that particularly at this period of time, it wasn't the right time to increase exponentially the charge to islanders. Thank you.
Great. And finally, Lyndon Farnham.
Oh, thank you very much. I know a little bit about this because I was stopped by a lady in the Ouen and St Peters just at the weekend, and we had a long conversation about her concerns over the long-term care fund and how the contributions were not really, she didn't feel the family were receiving value from the contributions. And so we do need to revisit it. One thing we don't do, we set up funds, and as Christina said, the long-term care fund is a good idea because it protects the assets. Those of us islanders who have worked and built up assets, it doesn't mean they have to utilise all of those assets to pay for their care. There's some help and support there. And I can give you an exclusive, because I looked it up after my conversation with the lady in the Ouen and St Peters, and the fund balance as at the 31st of December 2021 was £41 million. Thank you.
Great, that brings us to a close tonight. First of all, I'd like to thank all the candidates. It's been a good, clean fight. Hopefully that'll continue. So thank you to all 7 of you. And also to everyone who's come this evening. We've managed to squeeze in 11 questions, which was good going. I'd urge you all to vote on the 22nd. I suspect you're all registered. If you know people who aren't, they can still register, I believe, by the 15th to vote on polling day. Otherwise, thank you for coming out, and have a good rest of the election campaign.
May I, on behalf of the candidates, before you all applaud, thank the parish for making the event happen and providing the room, the chairs, the excellent timing from Anne, and also the chair also for representing you all and being an excellent adjudicator of events. So thank you for putting up with these conditions. I'm sorry it was cramped, but as I said to some people when you arrived, we weren't able to book the community centre this evening. But it's been great to see so many people here. Thank you.